Shadow of the Colossus. Considered by many as a video game masterpiece, this game has you play as a lone warrior, roaming around a desolate landscape of epic proportions, as you seek out and defeat the giant monsters known as the Colossi. Such a visually appealing and epic game of minimal content had been the sole game of its kind for the longest time. Then came in Pray for the Gods. Considering that this game technically isn't released just yet, although alpha gameplay is available, information is rather limited. But based off the synopsis of the game, you play as, again, a lone warrior trying to discover the mystery behind an everlasting winter. The only purpose of survival for you in this game is to seek out and kill the very gods you once believed in. 2 games, 2 stories, but are they more connected than we think? When we do look at Shadow of the Colossus in and of itself, the game doesn't offer any clear answers as to how their world works, and leaves us with many questions. What exactly are the Colossi? Where did they come from? And even more so, what happened to the Forbidden Lands in the first place? Why is it so desolate and empty? The game leaves those questions unanswered for the most part, but I have a theory of my own that'll clear those questions up. Pray for the Gods and Shadow of the Colossus take place in the same universe. As strange as this may be, evidence is there to back this up from both games, albeit mostly speculation on Pray for the Gods' part. While I do believe they're in the same universe, they can't be taking place at the same time. As for this part, it can go one of 2 ways. Pray for the Gods either taking place before or after Shadow of the Colossus. It all really depends on the information given and how one can piece it all together. First, we're going to look at how Pray for the Gods can be taking place as a prequel to SotC. As I mentioned, Pray for the Gods isn't technically released, so this will mainly be speculation. Let's talk about the quote-unquote gods first. The humanoid from the pre-alpha gameplay, and the bird from the second trailer. Both of these giants, and the Colossi from SotC, hold a number of similarities. Both games show them as gigantic, violent monsters that appear within ancient ruins. The one I mostly want to talk about, though, is the giant bird. SotC may have its fair share of Colossi, but there's only one that comes close here. Avion. Looking at Avion and the bird god, the resemblance is uncanny. Both monsters have bird-like bodies, extremely long tails, and wings that resemble a flying fox, just to name a few. Looking at Shadow of the Colossus again, Dorman is a being in control of life and death, and if this is true, then these giant god creatures killed can easily be reincarnated. In short, the bird god is Avion. One can argue how different they look and how much larger the bird god is compared, but perhaps this is intentional. Here's what I mean. Looking at the bird god, there is no limit, no boundaries, and no end to the damage it can cause. Avion, however, is strictly limited to the delta where you find it. So, upon being reincarnated, Avion was stripped away of its godly power, making it, and the rest of the Colossi, unable to spread the power and destroy the rest of the world. Speaking of the world, the locations of a number of these places play a role in this too. The large, deadly storm, which according to the synopsis had lasted for an extremely long time, was devastating on the civilization. Aside from the giants, the other creatures found in Prey for the Gods are birds and timberwolves. When we look at SotC, it appears to be during summer, and the only animals you do find are very small: lizards, turtles, bats, and so on. Now, say that this storm did subside on its own, or at the end of the Prey for Gods game, you stopped the storm yourself. Winter is not a time for renewal. It's a time of famine. And if this did go on as long as they say it did, then it would explain why so many people had disappeared from the Forbidden Lands, due to the winter storm. It would also explain why it is so empty as well, since many trees and plants can't exactly grow during a winter storm like this. It will also explain the older ruins being within isolated areas, such as caves, a last-ditch effort to try and survive the storm in vain. Many larger animals, such as the wolves, are no longer much in evidence, and the only main source of life can only be small creatures that just manage to avoid the storm. From a story perspective, and this is if Prey for the Gods is a far more recent event, perhaps the warrior you play as in Prey for the Gods is actually Wander's love Mono. Let me explain. We don't really know too much about Mono as a character, since she was basically dead throughout the whole game, but if she is the warrior, that's enough of a reason that she was sacrificed, as said by Wander himself, and what set him on his journey in the first place. And I don't know about you, but killing gods sounds like a pretty big cursed path to me. Also, those black figures you constantly see after every boss battle in SotC? Possibly the same souls attacking you on Prey for the Gods. Not as violent, of course, but rather the souls a part of each of the gods that Wander had killed, just like Mono had done. Now let's go ahead and flip that coin, and say that Prey for the Gods is in the future, rather than the past. What sort of proof does it hold up then? This may be a lot more story-based rather than in-game evidence, so make of that what you will. Now, this part will spoil the end of Shadow of the Colossus, so this will be deadly spoilers for you, and if you don't want it, then exit. For those who still here, you've been warned. At the very end of the game, Wander ended up resurrecting Dorman to his full power, and Dorman ends up controlling Wander temporarily in order to begin his reign. However, due to the intervention of Lord Emon and his men, Dorman had not only been failed, but is also banished from Wander's body. It's unclear if this is forever or temporarily, but that's not the point here. Here's the thing. While it did banish Dorman from Wander, there was no evidence that he had been separated. That means Dorman could possibly still have his full power. When we look at Prey for the Gods, there is one point where we see an old abandoned castle, with a destroyed bridge. We can see this in the second trailer as well, with the giant bird god flying over to this castle. In relations to Shadow of the Colossus, during the ending sequence, Lord Emon and his men race over the same bridge, and the power of Dorman begins to demolish it as they went, separating the Forbidden Land from the rest of the world. This power also begins to do all sorts of harm to this realm, which included summoning the horrid storm to the world, and resurrecting much stronger creatures that were once the Colossi. While he did had his full power to summon the storm, he still was weakened afterwards, and resulted in the horrid black spirits that haunt the frozen fields and mountains, which is Dorman himself and the remaining souls trying to stop you and kill you. It could be possible, though, that people still try to finish Dorman off for good, regardless, but it resulted in the many dead bodies the main character sees. Speaking of which, the main character could still be Mono herself, but instead of a girl sacrificed for killing gods, she became a warrior and sought out to seek revenge on what Dorman did to her own love, by killing the gods, and by extension, Dorman himself. This would explain the synopsis saying that you're killing gods you once believed in. These gods being the once worshipped Colossi of the Forbidden Land, and the separated seals of Dorman's soul. No matter which way you look at it, be it taking place in the past or future, I still have reason to believe both games existed in the same universe. Whichever you want to believe in is entirely up to you, and feel free to start your own thoughts on the matter below. I'll see you all later. Neon out.